The sign on the door said, Whitfield and Associates, Architecture and Design. My son's name, not mine. I stood in the lobby for a moment looking at it. 31 years I spent as a structural engineer. I taught him how to read blueprints before he started high school, and now I was standing in the lobby of a building he built with my money, waiting for a receptionist half my age to tell me where I was allowed to sit. "Can I help you?" she asked. Pleasant enough, young. She had a tablet in her hand and a headset around her neck. "I'm here for the opening reception," I said. "I'm Dorian's father." She looked at the tablet. Scrolled again. "Last name?" "Whitfield," I said. "Same as the door." She found me eventually. There was a small pause before she smiled, the kind of pause that means something. "Of course. Let me show you to your table." She led me through the main hall, past the long display of renderings on the wall, buildings my son had designed, some of them partially funded by money I had wired to his account without a second thought, and through a set of glass doors to the reception area, round tables with white linens, floral centerpieces, an open bar near the window overlooking downtown. She pointed me to a table near the back, table 9. Between the service entrance and the hallway to the bathrooms, I sat down. The place card in front of me said, simply, "Guest." Not Dorian's father. Not even my name. Just guest in that clean, neutral font my son's firm used on everything. I picked it up and held it for a second, then set it back down. I looked toward the front of the room. The head table, long, elevated slightly, set apart from the rest, had 8 seats. My son sat near the center, already deep in conversation with someone I didn't recognize. Beside him was my daughter-in-law, Celestine, and on her other side, her parents. Her father, a real estate developer from Scottsdale, her mother, who had never once asked me a single question about my life. They had glasses of champagne. They were laughing at something. I ordered water. I want to back up, because none of this came out of nowhere. That's the part that's hard to explain to people. That the moment I sat down at table 9 and read the word guest on my place card, I wasn't surprised. I was something worse than surprised. I was confirmed. Dorian is my only child. His mother, my wife Lorraine, passed when he was 19. Pancreatic cancer, 4 months from diagnosis to the end. Fast and brutal and final. After that, it was just the two of us. I kept teaching. I was a structural engineering professor at a state university in Ohio, and Dorian finished his undergraduate degree and then got into a graduate architecture program in Chicago. I was proud of him, more than proud. He had his mother's eye for beauty and my stubbornness, which I always thought was a good combination. He met Celestine in Chicago. She came from money, or at least from the appearance of money, and she had opinions about everything. I tried to like her. I did like her. For a while, she was sharp and well-read, and she made Dorian happy. What more do you want for your kid? They got married 6 years ago. I flew out, gave a toast, danced at the reception. It was a good wedding. I went home afterward and sat in the kitchen for a long time, feeling the particular quiet of a house that has been empty for years, but suddenly feels emptier. 3 years ago, Dorian called me on a Tuesday night. He had an opportunity, he said, a chance to break off from the firm he'd been working at and start his own. He and a colleague had been talking about it for a while. They had a name picked out. They had a vision. What they didn't have was capital. He asked me for $280,000. I want to be precise here, because precision matters. He did not ask me if I wanted to invest. He did not present me with terms or a repayment schedule or any kind of formal arrangement. He said, "Dad, I need your help to make this happen." And I said, "How much?" And he told me, and there was a silence. And then he said, "I know it's a lot, but you know I'll take care of you." I was 61 years old. I had spent 30 years being careful, maxing out my retirement contributions, paying off my mortgage early, keeping a clean emergency fund. The $280,000 he was asking for was sitting in a brokerage account I'd been building since the rain died. It was my buffer, my cushion against whatever might go wrong in the years ahead. I sent it. I want to say I agonized over it, but that would be a lie. It took me about 2 days. He was my son. He had his mother's eyes. And when he said, "You know, I'll take care of you," I believed him. Not because I needed to be taken care of, but because it meant something. That we were a team. That the money wasn't a gift so much as a bridge between us. Something we'd both be on together. I have the wire transfer confirmation. I have the email chain where he wrote, and I'm quoting directly from memory because I've read it so many times. "This is a loan, Dad. I know that. I'm going to pay you back every cent once we're stable. Thank you for believing in me." I have that email. For the first year, things were fine. He called every few weeks, send updates. The firm was growing. They'd landed a contract with a mid-sized developer. Things were moving. Then the calls got shorter. Then less frequent. Then I'd be the one calling, and he'd pick up but sound distracted, like I was interrupting something. I asked about the money once, in the second year. Gently, I said something like, "I know you're busy, but whenever you're ready to talk about a repayment plan, I'm flexible." He said they'd had some unexpected costs. Infrastructure stuff. He'd get back to me. He didn't. I asked again 6 months later. That time he got quiet, and then he said something that I've thought about every day since. He said, "Dad, I really thought you understood that this was about investing in our family's future. I didn't think we needed to treat it like a bank transaction." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I said, "You told me it was a loan." He said, "I said I'd take care of you." That's what I meant. That was 8 months before the grand opening of Whitfield and Associates. I went to the opening because I am his father. Because despite everything, the silence, the drift, the ways Celestine had stopped including me in holiday plans without ever saying a word about it, I wanted to see what he built. Part of me still needed to see it, needed to know the money had become something real, something that mattered, even if it no longer mattered to him that it came from me. So I sat at table 9. I watched from a distance as the evening unfolded. Dorian gave a speech. It was a good speech. Articulate, funny in the right places, genuinely moving toward the end. He talked about perseverance. He talked about vision. He thanked Celestine. He thanked her father, specifically, for his guidance and belief in the early days. He thanked his business partner. He thanked the staff. He did not mention me. Not once. Not a nod, not a glance in my direction. Nothing. I sat at table 9 between a woman from the contractor's office and a young associate, who spent most of the evening on his phone, and I watched my son accept congratulations from everyone in the room, and I was as invisible as the word guest on a place card. I left before dessert, walked to my rental car in the parking garage, sat in it for a while without starting the engine. I am not a man who cries easily. Lorraine used to say that about me. Dorian's father doesn't cry, he processes. She meant it warmly. But sitting in that parking garage, I wasn't processing. I was just sitting, and then I drove back to my hotel, and I lay on the bed in my clothes, and I stared at the ceiling for a long time. The next morning, I called my attorney. Her name is Vivedo Say. We'd worked together years ago when I had a boundary dispute with a neighbor. Nothing serious. I explained the situation. The wire transfer. The emails. The conversation where he'd called it a loan. She asked if I had documentation. I said I had everything. She said, "Then we have a case." I want to be honest about what happened inside me when she said that. There was no satisfaction. I didn't feel righteous or vindicated. I felt tired. I felt like I was 63 years old, and I was about to go to war with my only child over money I'd given him because I loved him, and he'd told me he'd take care of me. And the idea of that, the simple, bleak reality of that, was the most exhausting thing I'd ever faced. But I filed. Dorian was shocked. I know this because Celestine called me 2 days after he was served, which is the most she'd initiated contact with me in 2 years. She said this was unnecessary and hurtful, and that I was damaging the family over a misunderstanding. I listened. I let her finish. Then I said, "Celestine, I have emails where your husband calls it a loan. I have a wire transfer receipt for $280,000. If it was a misunderstanding, that's between Dorian and himself. She hung up. Dorian's attorney, not him, he hired someone else, which tells you something, argued that the transfer was a gift made voluntarily by a parent in support of his child's career, consistent with a pattern of parental support throughout the child's life. They tried to characterize the email as aspirational language rather than a legal commitment. They brought in a character witness who described Dorian as a devoted son who maintained a close relationship with his father. I sat in that courtroom and listened to that and thought about Table 9. My attorney put the emails into evidence. She put the wire transfer confirmation into evidence. She put into evidence a text message from Dorian, sent 4 months after the transfer, where he wrote, "Haven't forgotten about the repayment timeline, Dad. We'll reach out when Q2 closes." Q2 came and went. Q3, Q4. 2 full years of quarters and not a single outreach. The judge was a practical woman. She did not seem moved by aspirational language. She looked at the emails. She looked at the texts. She ruled in my favor. Full amount, plus legal fees. $280,000 coming back to me, plus approximately $42,000 in fees and costs that Dorian was ordered to cover. I didn't celebrate. I went to a diner near the courthouse and ordered coffee and a piece of apple pie, and I sat in a booth by the window. And I thought about the night I wired the money, sitting at my kitchen table in Ohio, reading his request again, feeling something warm and uncomplicated. The simple pleasure of being able to help your kid. I thought about the email he sent after. "Thank you for believing in me." I thought about Table 9. The money was deposited into my account 11 weeks later, after Dorian exhausted his options for appeal, which were limited given the documentation. I've since moved it into a combination of index funds and a short-term bond ladder. Boring, conservative, exactly what you'd expect from a retired engineering professor. It will keep me comfortable for a long time. Dorian and I have not spoken since the judgment. He sent one message, through his attorney initially, asking if I would consider a mediated conversation about rebuilding the relationship. I did not respond through an attorney. I waited a few weeks, and then I wrote him a letter. A real one, on paper, the kind you have to think about. I told him I loved him. I told him I had loved him since the moment he was born, and that love was not contingent on the money or the lawsuit or the outcome of any of it. I told him that what hurt me was not being seated at Table 9, though I'd be lying if I said that didn't sting, but the way he'd look through me like I wasn't there. Like the $280,000 had been processed and filed, and the account had been closed. I told him that his mother would have been heartbroken, not at him necessarily, at all of it. At the distance between us that neither of us seemed to know how to cross anymore. I said I was willing to talk when he was ready, but that I needed him to understand what had actually happened. Not the legal version, not the aspirational language version, but the real one. That his father gave him everything he had, because his father believed in him, and his father ended up at Table 9. I haven't heard back. Some mornings I sit in my kitchen in Ohio. Different house now. Smaller. I downsized after I retired. And I drink my coffee, and I look out at the backyard, and I think about the fact that I am 63 years old, and my only child and I are strangers. That is a particular kind of grief that I don't have a name for. It's not anger anymore. It might never have been anger, really. It was always something closer to bewilderment. How do you look at your father and see guest? I don't know the answer. Maybe he doesn't either. What I know is this. I spent 30 years building something careful and solid, the way engineers do. And then I handed a significant piece of it to someone I trusted completely, and he treated it like it didn't cost me anything. And when I asked for it back, he hired a lawyer and called it a gift. The money is back. The principle is intact. My retirement is fine. Everything else is a different kind of math, and I'm still working through it.